Hey guys, I wanted to make this really quick video today to just touch on what might be considered the greatest game of all time that was made for the Commodore 64 and 128. The amazing Eye of the Beholder that dropped in November of 2022 by Andreas Larsson and some other really talented musicians and artists. They've been working on this game literally for years. And in November of 2022, version 1.0 hit the scene like a nuclear bomb went off. It is the most amazing thing I've ever seen on a Commodore. I just finished that game after playing it for a few weeks, and I wanted to walk you through what I believe is the absolute pinnacle way to play this game if you have some of the very, very cool new and vintage hardware. This is just the way that I did it, and it is absolutely amazing. I can say hands down, this is one of the greatest gaming experiences I've ever had on a Commodore machine. And I've been using these suckers for a long, long time, okay? So let me show you how I did it and walk you through my process. Okay guys, so this is sort of just a play, record, and stream of consciousness kind of video today, and show you guys what I believe to be the absolute best setup you can have to play this amazing game. First and foremost, you're going to want a Commodore 128 if you have one. You can also emulate this, I suppose. The reason being is because the Commodore 128 comes with a bunch of really fantastic natural abilities that the Commodore 64 doesn't have. For example, you're going to get the number pad. This is fantastic for movements, just like on an Amiga. In fact, it felt like at times I was on an Amiga 500 or 1000 where I was using these keys and using the 1351 mouse. Now, the 1351 mouse, obviously, these are kind of hard to find these days. All of this is kind of hard to find to some degree. This is just a best case scenario. 1351, there are lots of modern replacements for this. You can use adapters to use more modern mice and that sort of thing. This is actually an original 1351. And I soon found out when playing this game that this was new old stock. It had never even been used. But actually the buttons were really mushy. And in a game like this, you actually really need some precision tools. And so I actually had to discover on my own and some friends of mine in the Commodore Club here in Seattle, figure out some microswitch replacements so I popped out the original ones, put in the new ones, and now this thing works flawlessly. It's absolutely rock solid. So 1351 mouse for pointing and clicking. You're going to use the number pad on the C128. And then ultimately, you could use something like this to load the game. The problem is if you're going to use an Ultimate 2 Plus, or something very similar to this, it actually says, like the original Ultimate 2, it actually says on the screen when you're playing, if you activate turbo mode, which on the Commodore 128, you can go into its 2 megahertz mode, which is absolutely awesome. And it really makes the battles more fluid and more seamless, a little less sluggish. It feels very natural. It feels amazing. You hit F3 to do that. It'll say on the screen, if you're using an Ultimate and you enter turbo mode, it will crash, and it absolutely does, like that. So what they recommend is the EasyFlash. Now the EasyFlash, if you're not familiar with it, basically you have to use a modern computer of some sort and Commodore 64. You can't actually program the EasyFlash using a C128. You have to use a Commodore 64. This is something I discovered along the way as I was trying to make the most optimum environment to play this game. You need to program these things, and you're moving a cartridge image over to this device, right? So this can hold like several cartridge images, and it's almost instant loading once you turn it on. That's what makes this really, really cool, and we'll power this up in just a little bit. The C128, it has a bunch of other features that the C128 can't access. It can only access the cartridge images. but that's all we care about. You're also going to want, in my opinion, some good old-fashioned floppy drives. Now I'm on a C128D, so I get the floppy for free because it's built in, the 1571. The reason why I say you want to have some extra floppy disks is because, at least right now with version 1, there's only one save slot. There's no backup beyond that if you screw up or you think you want to start over in a certain area of the map. So by having save disks, the way I did this, I would try and clear a level, and I would save at the end of each level onto floppy, and then I would move into a new region, and I'm going along the way saving to the EasyFlash. This overwrites its save file every single time, and there's no backtracking. But if I really screwed up, I had, I could go back in time a little bit to my previous main save. So this gave me some insurance, and it gave me some peace of mind, and I actually did use it a few times when I needed to backtrack in a certain area. So for me, in terms of hardware, what I did was I used a 1702 original Commodore monitor as my main monitor. This is where all the game is going to happen. This is where all the graphics, this is where you're playing. I also have a 1902A, which is usually what I use for my C128, because it has the ability to go into 40 or 80 column mode. This one I reserved for just the map. So when you turn this on and you start to play, it'll automatically know that you're running both monitors because it has the two different video chips, right? Once you get into game mode, it'll automatically turn this one on into the map, which is phenomenal. It's really wicked. And this one's going to be my game. Now, you can use just one monitor and you can flip. You can flip into either mode. On the 1702, though, because it doesn't support 80 columns, the map looks kind of chunky. It doesn't look as good. When it's over here, it looks amazing. And then you've got the game mode, and it is one of the most beautiful video games I've ever seen on a Commodore 64. So first we're going to put in the EasyFlash. Firing up, turn on the monitor, turn on the monitor. So what you probably see at this point is that all of this stuff is grayed out. And this easy program, that's how you're actually going to go in and move things over when you're trying to program or flash the cartridge. This doesn't work. It'll crash the machine. You really can only use an EasyFlash on a C128 in terms of just playing off the cartridge slots. All this other stuff, extra kernels and cartridge images that are like the super snapshot and stuff like that. You're not gonna do that here. It's all about just playing the game. So let's get in there. And I mean, guys, the music. First time I heard this, it made the hair on my arms just raise up like, oh my God. All right, I'm not going to play the whole thing here. So when you get to the main screen, the first thing you're going to see, it's going to recognize like your hardware. It's going to recognize your sound chip, what video mode you're in, whatever, NTSC. Thank you so much, you guys, for taking an original NTSC game, building it in PAL land, but still supporting its original format so beautifully and so fluidly. I really appreciate the effort that you went through to do that. And obviously version 1.0, this is going to change in the future. There are some bugs that are in this original version that are going to be addressed and are already being addressed by the team that built this. When you first start off, you can watch the intro again, which I've done billions of times because it's so amazing. You can start a new party. I've already got one. And in fact, I'm just going to load. And you get the choice between flash loading and disk loading. And I've already talked about that a little bit. I'm going to do flash load. Takes only about a second. Map comes first. And then there is the actual game. Now this is the final level, getting ready to face the final battle of Xanathar. I'm right in front of the door. That's where I saved the last time. You can see a lot of my progress here on the map. And so this is how I was playing, right? Doing it like this. Looking up here and occasionally referencing this thing, not having to flip between modes. It was just, I can't express in words how fantastic this experience was, playing this amazing, beautiful game in these kinds of graphics with these kinds of sound effects. Now, I do want to say one last thing before we shut this down, because I really wanted to just kind of show you the setup of what I think is the optimum way to play this if you have the hardware. And it took me a while to figure it out. Right now, there's a bug that when you finish this game, it forgets to check that it's in 2 megahertz mode or not. And I was playing the game in 2 megahertz mode the first time I finished it, because it makes the final battle way easier to move around. It's very responsive. If you're in 1 megahertz mode, it gets kind of sluggish like you're underwater, and my timings were all off. So I was in 2 megahertz mode, which I can just do by tapping F3. 2 megahertz mode enabled. The problem is when you beat Xanathar, if you're in 2 megahertz mode, it's going to glitch out the final sequence. It's going to, the final movie that you get to watch. Just like you're on an Amiga, the final movie is all there, you guys, and it is gorgeous. It's beautiful, but it's not going to work unless you're in 1 megahertz mode, right? You have to. So I actually had to go back and beat it a second time and make sure I beat it in 1 megahertz mode in order to watch the end sequence. And it's totally worth it. It's not that bad. You're going to lose like most of your party along the way, but who cares? There's not an Eye of the Beholder 2 for, well, at least not yet. So it's not like you need your party members at this point. Sort of a one and done. But holy smoke. Just make sure you've disabled that if you have the capability of doing 2 megahertz mode, because it's totally worth watching that final sequence. So guys, that is, in my opinion, the greatest setup you can use to play, and I'm going to say it, the greatest game for the Commodore 128 ever made on planet Earth in my lifetime and yours too. I hope you enjoyed checking this out, and if you get the chance to play it yourselves, even if it's not on this type of a setup, you're not going to be disappointed. It's going to blow you away. I guarantee it.
So remember, guys, keep that Commodore love flowing, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.